Good afternoon, Bahamas, and welcome to the Hit Back. I'm your host, Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. I hope that you are doing well, taking care of yourself, and living your best life today. I'm really excited, of course. Whenever I have these shows, and I always tell you guys, I love doing these shows because this is the total thing. This is the central part of who we are, knowing ourselves. How can you be successful unless you know what success means to you? How can you know what success means to you if you don't know what you need, what you want? All of that means that you have to know who you are. Successful relationships are a part of every successful story. And if you are not successful in your home, if you're not successful with your friends, it makes any sort of material success feel null and void. A lot of rich people are lonely, and they would rather live with joy than live just with things. Don't die alone. Die with all your family. Be wealthy in relationships first. Be wealthy by yourself in spirit first. And then you could talk about the material things. Because what's all the money if you ain't got nothing, no one to spend it with, no one to laugh with to your jokes, and they know them, they stale, but they still laugh at you because this stale is a part of your story. Being stale is your story. And they love you for it. And I can't do any of these shows, and I love her to death, to life, my beautiful friend, and a privilege. God is so good that I call her a friend, the one and only, my good friend, my sister from another mother. I don't know how you put it. Dr. Edrica Richardson, Dr. E, family and marriage therapist, specialist. I don't know. We say therapist? We say therapist. I call you specialist.
Yeah. Hi, friend.
Hi, darling. It's so good to see you. You look fabulous as usual.
Thank you. You do too. You know, you gotta feel. You gotta show how you feel, right? So
Yeah.
Even if you gotta fake it, some days you just gotta put on some makeup and do what you gotta do.
Boy, makeup really is work out some days. I'll tell you that. Well, Dr. E.
Look, let's talk about those pictures you see when people put on makeup, and I feel like, ooh, the sorcery. But anyway,
the sorcery.
You said something. You said something in the beginning, and I said that's it. It's all about, you can be so wealthy and poor, because people don't realize how important it is to have healthy, happy relationships.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, I have tons of clients with money, and some of them pay to come to therapy because that's the only connection they really have.
Wow.
And that really reminds us all that at the end of the day, a lot of people out there working right now, maybe you haven't even been home to your family for the last 24 hours. But what are you actually working for if you're not spending time or investing with the people in which you say you're working for? Because I hear too much, especially from my adolescent clients, about how their parents will buy them things. And then the parents are like, I don't know what the issue is. But really, the problem is you're not investing in me. You don't know who I am. And I can't wait to get out of this house, because I need to be around and with people who appreciate who I am, because I like relationships. I like connection. And so that's all about intimacy. It's not just about this financial gain. You could have plenty of money.
That's right.
Sleeping by yourself. And at the end of the day, money don't even smell like good. So I know you do that because you start smelling bad. But anyway, it's all about having healthy relationships. It really is. And so
it really is.
We really have to be intentional about intimacy. Like, what is true intimacy? What is the true idea of connection and building healthy, happy homes? And again, home doesn't have to be a physical space. It really starts, I believe this and I practice this, it starts within yourself, because it don't matter where I'm at, I'm home.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. It doesn't matter where you are at, I'm home. Boy, look, that's a word, Dr. E.
I'm gonna have to write that down. Look at, what I can put that together. Write that on my handy dandy little notebook. Like I have the same Dorothy.
Handy dandy notebook. That's true. It's so true. No matter where you are, I'm home. Oh my God. And that's because they say home is where the heart is. Loving yourself. If your heart is with yourself and you are happy with yourself and truly intimate with who you are, and that's a powerful thing. And when folks, I think good teams and spouses, when you say, you know what, it doesn't matter what we have as long as we're together, and you mean that, that's a powerful thing. It doesn't matter once we're in it together.
I was just having this conversation actually last night with my best friend. We were watching something, and I was watching, the people were going back to their backstories of where they came from, and now they're in these. This is like I like to watch Married at First Sight. I have issues, okay?
Mhm.
But anyway, and they were going to their backstories of where they came from, and I was saying how important it is for people to really understand your story, but not only understanding your story, to see how far these people have come. Like this one girl was talking about, if you saw her house, it's nothing more than a trailer-sized home,
Mhm.
and she grew up in this, and now she's like uberly successful doing research and all this
Oh
stuff
wow.
in her field. And what she was saying at the end of the day is, man, I know what it is from nothing, and now I have stuff. But at the end of the day, all I want is to be loved and be in a relationship that continues to add to my fulfillment and be an extension of myself, because that adds to my feeling of having a home. And I was like, wow. So people are getting it. And I think that this is why it's so important that we have shows like this, and we have conversations about just mental health and human life and the ability to connect and be with people. And so we can talk about some specific things today, but this just reminds me of a post. I know I sent it to you this week, and then I made a post about it because I don't know, I was on some good juju this week. But I will say my clients have inspired this. And I was in a conversation with one of my clients this week in a session, and she was just talking about, feeling the effects of a relationship, and she
Yeah.
was just saying how she was reeling from it, and we were talking about grief and loss of relationships, and I was just telling her, I said, in practicing forgiveness, you have to realize that the ultimate forgiveness is to forgive yourself, right? And anybody else from that is just adding to it. And then I said to her, I said, how are you expecting that person you're in a relationship to meet you if they didn't meet themselves? And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, oh, this is a worthy moment to put out to the world. I said, you cannot you cannot expect someone to meet you with emotional intimacy if they haven't been vulnerable with themselves. And she said, what do you mean? I
Yeah.
said, exactly what I just said. I said, how do you expect to be in a relationship with somebody who has not showed up for themselves yet? And now
Woo!
you're feeling bad because somehow the end of this relationship is a reflection of you. I said, no, no, no. I said, you're in therapy now. You're dealing with you, and you have been dealing with you. And I said, you sitting here reeling now 6 months, a year later over this relationship when that person hasn't shown up for themselves yet. And she was like, ooh. I said,
That's
yes.
deep. That's deep.
And,
They
and,
haven't
and, I,
shown up
and,
for
I,
themselves. That's deep.
and we do this to ourselves all the time. We have this expectation that when relationships end, we always look at ourselves. We always look at
And that's what
how,
we've been taught, though. Isn't that what we've been taught? That, don't look at, ask yourself how you were a part of the failure of it. And so we tend to be introspective, but I find that that is a person who's seeking answers. And that's a healthy position where you look and say, okay, but we tend to, I think a lot based on what your point is, and which is a great point, after we look and assume that we had a lot more to play in it, rather than looking, assessing, and being honest and saying, well, listen, it wasn't me. Like, sometimes it ain't you. Sometimes it's
it's
really
not.
the other person.
And then we take so long at that point to then start to work on the forgiveness of ourselves. So the fact that it was not us.
Mhm.
You really have to be honest. Sometimes you are not the problem in the relationship. Either the relationship may have had poor timing, because sometimes relationships you could really be with somebody, but y'all this is just ain't the right time. Like maybe they're ending something else, or maybe they're going through a life phase, and if y'all have met like 6 months before or 6 months after, it'd be perfect. But that could be the reason. It could be the fact that um, they aren't mature enough for a relationship, because
Mhm.
there's a lot of emotional immaturity in relationships, and it's to the point now it's just like, oh, like I need to grow up. Like maturational age and chronological age is something
Mhm.
I talk about all the time, because they're two different things. There are a lot of people who are chronologically, let's say they're 40, but maturationally, you're dealing with a 20-year-old,
Wow.
and there's
That's a
nothing
lot.
like doing that. Right. There's
It's a
a
lot of
huge deficit.
stunted emotional growth, right? A lot of that stunted emotional growth. And that's,
Emotional immaturity, such a turn off. Like I just feel like I've met people who are 25 and who have the emotional capacity of a 40-year-old, right? And people are like, how can you date that younger person? Because they grown. And you just sitting there being old, but you're grown.
That's right. Come on now. Preach it.
And then there are people when relationships end, I agree. I said this on the show before, you should go back to your relationship, and figure out what you learned from it. But after you figure out what you learned from it, then let it go. Take that lesson, use it, utilize it to propel you to the next level. But what people tend to do, and what my client was doing was, now that this relationship had ended, and we've gone through it, and she knows that, I I exhausted my options. I did what I can. Here's the part I'm accountable for. She was still having a hard time for forgiveness, and I said, so these conversations we having, did you try to have those with your partner? Yeah. I said, well, when you tried to have any emotional conversation with your partner, where are they at? She was like, missing in action. I said, well, then how did you ever expect them to show up in the relationship to you? And I think that is how we start to self-sabotage, because we see that people are not ready.
Yeah.
And we have this emotional expectation from them. And when they show up saying ready, why do we sit there and stay? And then at the end of it, we have to do so much emotional repair and forgiveness for the fact that it wasn't us. It was them.
That's right.
So I think it's very, very important that people realize that emotional intimacy is so, so great. And it's something we should all continue to constantly working on. But if you're meeting somebody who doesn't have an idea of emotional health, emotional communication, emotional relationships, just being emotionally present, why are you trying to be in an emotional relationship with them? Are you just trying to set yourself up to be a failure so you could say, you know what, I'm the sabotager?
Before we go to break, I got to ask you this question, Dr. E. Then what is the pool like of emotional health in the Bahamas? I feel like there's so much that we are as a country just beginning to mature when it comes to emotional intelligence, understanding that, hey, it's okay to seek therapy. Not only okay, it is vital for some of us to deal with this trauma. It's vital for some of us to get sensitive. I mean, we got a lot of brothers who are now understanding and coming to themselves saying, hey, I need some help, but it's still a lot where, this machismo, this ego brothers are still not seeking the sort of help or even taking time to say, hey, hold on, I'm in pain. Because to recognize that means you've softened up. Just the emotional pool, right? The emotional intelligence pool in the country. What would you say it is right now? Because I think a lot of people are just like, well, listen, the pool is shallow. I guess I got to grab what I could grab.
Look, you about to make me say all my posts this week. We got to stop being lonely, and thinking that that's with relationships. So what I'd say with that is, I think where it leads now from my experience, we're between 50 and 60%, believe it or not.
50 and 60% what? Yeah. Emotionally intelligent?
Yeah.
That's a good number.
I think we are. I think from the encounters that I've had from the people who are seeking out, I mean, me and my admin were talking about this lately, is the fact that the inquiries for therapy and the inquiries about just basic information. Some people just will message us to get some information about health and wellness stuff. It is very encouraging, and I'm talking all walks of life. So we just have to understand that maybe you are dating in the wrong pool, right? And there are some pools of people, and you got to explore it a little bit more. You got to get out your comfort zone, and there is people out there who could meet your criteria. You just got to stop dating everything because you're lonely.
I just love that. Just stop dating every single buddy. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Dr. E is joining us on the show. We're talking today, interestingly, just touching on emotional intelligence there, but we are talking about self-sabotaging behavior. And what is hyperindependence? All of these things that are great. I mean, I'm so looking forward to this conversation with Dr. E. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more with Dr. Edrica Richardson, self-sabotaging behavior. That's the topic of the day. We'll be back after this. And we're back. You are listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. I've got joining me the one and only Dr. Edrica Richardson. Let me bring her on. Dr. E, welcome to the show.
Hello, and I always love being here with you. You know that. And so this is going to be a great show, like always, because we're talking about stuff, especially during the season that's coming up.
Yeah.
We really have to pay attention to what are we doing, because the shows we do are always for growth purposes.
Yes.
How can we take some understanding from this and be better as individuals?
Mhm.
And then when we're better as individuals, we're better as systems, which means that our whole country gets better.
Yeah.
One
Oh,
part
I
connects
love
to the
that.
other.
Yeah. I
And
love
so
that.
self-sabotage, what is
Yeah.
it? We say this word all the time, but I really don't know if people actually understand what it means. But self-sabotaging behavior really is what it is. It's behaviors that create problems in your daily life and interferes with your long-standing goals.
Mm-hmm.
So the most common ones that people tend to do all the time: procrastination, number one.
That's it.
Self-medication is another one. Comfort eating. Ooh, I know
Mm-hmm.
we do that in our culture.
That's right.
And forms of sometimes self-injury are other self-sabotaging behaviors. And
Mm.
so people aren't always aware that they are sabotaging themselves, believe it or not. And they connect these behaviors to something self-defeating, like saying things like there's no guarantee, so I might as well go eat this next burger, or I might as
Mm-hmm.
well go drink this next drink. But what happens is you have to look at the long term. And we know that it's very, very possible to overcome this, but there are many reasons why people tend to act out. And the question is, why are you doing it? And I want to look at this from a couple of different angles. So we can look at this from the individual perspective, the relationship perspective, but also the sibling and family perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and let's start with the family, because I think we got to start there. Some of y'all in some toxic sibling family dynamic relationships. I
Oh,
mean, so toxic, like someone's named the black sheep or the golden child, right? You've heard those phrases before when we
yep.
talk about families. But believe it or not, those phrases alone can create some self-sabotaging behavior,
Mm-hmm.
because sibling relationships are usually results come from whatever the parental dynamics were first. So if your parents weren't usually as available, sometimes you start to see that siblings then take it out on each other, believe it or
Yeah.
not.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could see things like they'll be depressed, aggressive, controlling, whatever it is. So when parents don't set boundaries or manage the siblings within the household, you start to see these really unhealthy sibling relationships develop. And the other side is the polarizing fact that when people say things like you have to be brother and sister, like you have to be good sisters to each other, what exactly does that mean? Because
Yeah.
you may grow up in a family system where your sibling, you blood related to them, but you look at them some days and you're like, I just really don't want to have nothing to do with you. Like we just don't gel well, we don't vibe well. Like it's just
It ain't
I don't
right.
know how. Yes. And so although you'd want to like deny it, parents often, and I know someone will give me some flack about this, but I believe it and I stand by it. There is always a favorite child. There is
Really.
always a favorite child. I don't think parents try to explicitly do this, but there's always the golden child and there's the black sheep. And that's why you need to be aware of this. Because you don't intentionally do this, but you will treat them differently. And it could be a different factors. Sometimes you have kids with different temperaments or
Mm-hmm.
personalities and you don't have a choice, right? Like I can think of some families I've had, and it's like this one child in the family, you just don't know what's wrong with them. Like I mean, like you don't know what's wrong with them. You've tried to get them therapy, you've tried to ask them what's going on, you've tried to be emotionally supportive. But some people just have hard upbringings, not because of the situation, but it's just something in them that is just so rough or rugged. And no matter what the family does, nothing can change it. And so that prevents how a parent may treat a child differently. Or they may kind of overcrowd them with love and support because they think that's going to help, which is also going to create sibling dynamics. So what I always try to tell parents to do is that you want to try to be conscious of how you may be treating your kids differently if they have different needs, because you might have kids who have different learning needs or emotional needs, so you are going towards them more. But whoever is, excuse me, whoever's the black sheep of the family is usually the scapegoat. They're always portrayed as the bad person, that they could do nothing right. And as a result of it, they develop a stronger defense mechanism for projection. So they tend to project their feelings onto the other family members.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you have the golden child, which is usually the parent's version of who's the extension of them, right? That's the one that kind of is the best of everything. And what tends to happen is why this creates toxic sibling relationships and self-sabotaging is because the black sheep will tend to internalize that family message that this is, I am the problem. And also the person who's a golden child internalizes that. And either end are both bad ends
Oh,
of the
wow.
spectrum, believe it or not, because they can create things like this deep sense of loneliness. Because I can think of particular clients who are very much the golden child of the family, but they feel so lonely because when they don't meet the expectation, it is almost like the level of disappointment that comes from their parents is astronomical. Like they don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to emotionally kind of regulate themselves when their parents say, "Oh, you just brought home like A minus."
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they don't know how to deal with that. And
Wow.
so what I'm saying is that on both ends, you see it happening. And so what then tends to happen is not only do you have to live with this label, then you start to see the sibling dynamics, they internalize this. And when they start to internalize this, you start to see bullying happening between the siblings.
Mm.
And they start to act differently. And so you start to see that relationship becoming infected by what's happening. So
That's
it's
crazy.
we have to be very, very conscious of how we may be enabling this relationship dynamic between the siblings. Another version is I think of one of my friends wrote a great post this week about the fact that when you're the single one in the family or you're the one who's financially well off, you can also be sabotaging as well. And you could be sabotaging for the fact that everyone depends on you, right? So they depend on you because your availability, they assume, let's say you're the single one, they just assume you have extra money and you should be giving this extra money because you have no other responsibility. Let me
Yeah.
just tell you that's a lie. That's a
That's
lie from
right.
the pit of hell. Okay? Or if you are the one who is financially well off, they expect you to always give more. And that shouldn't always be the case,
Mm-hmm.
right? At some point, is there something else I can do besides bringing my financial self to the table? Because I know people struggle with that too. And as a result, you start doing stuff where it becomes self sabotaging is you distance yourself from the family dynamic.
Yeah.
You start to create walls, right? Remember, self sabotaging is all about behaviors that you do that don't actually get you what you want. They take you further away from the things that you say that you value.
Wow.
And so with siblings, I tend to see that, or you have the one who always gets away with everything, right?
Yep.
I could think of a dynamic where, the one child who's the responsible child, and then the one child who's, I call the screw up child.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the screw up, everybody kind of like crowds around them and they kind of enable this behavior. And as a result of it, the one who is supposed to be the responsible one gets left out in the emotional cold most of the time. They have to fend for themselves emotionally. Because they're doing so well, people always misconstrue the fact that I'm doing well, meaning that my emotional needs are met. Those are two separate things. I could be financially doing well, I could be career wise doing well, but emotionally, I could be suffering because nobody's paying attention to the fact that I need this connection. I need someone to ask me how I'm doing today. What do I need? But we don't think about that. And that is something we really, really have to pay attention to. And so when I think about siblings, ask yourself, do these people who are I'm related to, are we having a reciprocal relationship? Are there things that I'm doing subtly that can be sabotaging the way we're connecting? Am I always the one asking for stuff? Am I always the one needing things? Am I the one showing up in the relationship? Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you can sabotage for the fact that you aren't showing up. Maybe the one who comes to the family event and you're always sitting in the corner. Yeah. Or maybe the one who never picks up the phone or returns calls back. So all of this creates behaviors in which put people at a distance. So that's it from a sibling level. Really, parents, I want you to think about that. Are you forcing relationships? Don't force relationships between your kids. And also, if you are the sibling, how are you making sure that you are connecting with your sibling? Have you made an attempt? And after those attempts, are they respecting your boundaries? Maybe you have a sibling who just show up to your house unannounced. Child, don't do that. Don't do that over here.
You know what I want to
Um,
ask you, Dr. E, if you're just tuning in, Dr. Edrica Richardson, we're talking about self-sabotaging behavior, and we'll also talk about hyperindependence as well as a part of that self-sabotaging sort of vein as well. One more time, say it for those who didn't hear it, who just came in. Self-sabotaging is moving away. It's doing things that move you further away from what you really want. Is it
right.
one more time, give me that definition one more time, because that was powerful in and of itself when you were talking about what is self-sabotaging behavior in and of itself.
Okay. So it's any behavior that creates problems in your daily life and interferes with your long-term goals. So the most common ways are procrastination.
Hmm.
Maybe you're supposed to call somebody back and it's been 2 weeks now.
Hmm.
Maybe it's self-medication. Maybe instead of showing up emotionally, you drink your feelings away.
Hmm.
Maybe it is comfort eating. So instead of you working on the work stress, you eat your work stress out. Maybe it's doing something self-injurious like cutting to release your emotional self. So what essentially it is any behaviors that creates these self-defeating consequences. So in other words, you disengage from things and you do other things that promote unhealthy aspects of it. But then you get to say, this is why it's happening. It's not me. This is why it's happening. Like I can't lose weight because I don't find it so I'm eating this burger.
Hmm. I mean, hey, I'm going to
Not
lose
the
this weight anyway. Yeah, yeah,
not the fact that you don't have the time because you've dedicated more time to work than yourself.
yeah. Hmm.
And if you would take 30 minutes back that they ain't paying you for to put in yourself, you could actually make some food. But you
Hmm.
make an excuse.
Right.
It's
That's deep.
little things like that.
Is it subconscious or are we aware?
Oh, it is very, very unconscious. Most of us don't realize that we're doing it until it gets really to this really bad place. Like we lose something, and usually we lose some form of a relationship, and then it hits us like, oh, how did this happen? How
Hmm.
did this happen? So sometimes the only thing that's standing between us and our happiness
Hmm.
is our relationship and our relationship with ourselves. And our relationship with ourselves is really what kind of creates or makes us aware if we are creating self-sabotaging behavior. So again, when you consciously make decisions for yourself, well, are you consciously making decisions for yourself? That's the first thing. Like I had a client this week who was talking to me about the fact that I was like, "Oh, you're going to school now. You're excited about it." Well, this is what my parents wanted. I was like, "Okay, so you think you're gonna do well?" Well, this is what my parents want. I said, "Well, that sounds a little self-sabotaging right
Yeah.
there because you're not actually doing anything and you can't find the purpose or the reason for it." And so I said, "Tell me one conscious thing you're doing today." And they said, "I don't know." And so oftentimes it's very, very, I want to say it's very subconscious that we do this. And it may be because we also have this idea of perfectionism on the other
Hmm.
end of it. A big reason why we tend to self sabotage is we have low self esteem, we have low self worth. So many times it's because we have just been taught to worry if our partners may like us enough, or worry about the fact that we're pushing for things that we don't think that we deserve, or we're afraid of rejection.
Hmm.
So when we look at it, individuals may not feel like they can get any better, so they just settle. They settle for any
Hmm.
attention, any affection, any connection, whether it's negative or positive. And so some individuals might fear commitment on the other side of this. So that may be why their relationships crave this independence. And I know we're going to get to that in a minute, but what all of this is saying is that self-sabotaging relationships, really a lot of it has to do with your attachment style. Like how are you creating healthy attachments? Are you creating unhealthy attachments where you are just focusing on things that don't make sense for you? Have you questioned these things and why they're happening?
Hmm.
um Procrastination is one of the number one things I always get asked about, right? When my clients are saying, they
Yes.
want to set goals, they always say to me, "Doc, well, how do I stop procrastinating?" And I said, "Well, what do you think is like, why are you procrastinating?" And they're like, "I don't know, I just do it." I said, "No, no, no. Let's go back. People don't just do stuff. Why are you doing it?"
Mhm.
So, well, I'm supposed to develop the second plan to my business, right? But I just can't find the time. I said, do you really want to open the business?
The
And they're
fear of
like,
failure.
nope. Right. And so then when we kind of take the layers back, we peel away the layers to the onion, is what I call it. We get to understand why. And then this fear of failure or even fear of success, which is the opposite of that,
Oh yeah.
create people to not do the things for the things that they say they want for themselves.
Hmm.
So when we look at attachment, we have to practice a little version of what I call non-attachment, where we accept things as they are, as they're coming to us. And when it's time for them to go, we have to let them go effortlessly. So when you think about procrastinating, I have developed my own new relationship with procrastinating because when I was younger, well, younger than I am now, I would have a schedule. I would stick to the schedule, and I would get papers done. I would write. I would do research on these things at certain times, and I would get my work in. Yeah, I was great. And then I became a little bit older, and right now I'm in a relationship with procrastination.
Me too.
I will
I was so much
plan.
better when I was younger.
Yeah, but this is what I do. I have a conversation with myself, and then I have to accept this is who I am now. I am no longer that version of myself that would do it a week ahead of time, 2 weeks ahead of time. I will have things on my calendar. I will look at them. And how I developed this healthy relationship with what I call my own level of procrastination that I don't have anxiety about anymore is all right. So let's say that you and I are prepping for a show that's 2 weeks out. We already know what we're going to talk about. I will say, okay, this is a great topic. I could pull some articles and they could be up in a window and I could minimize that window.
That's right.
But to be honest with you, that is my prep work. And then
Yeah.
about a day before, I will say to myself, okay, now you need to do it.
Hmm.
But telling myself, oh, the week before you could do it, 2 days
No.
before you could do it, three. No, I stopped doing that because what I was doing was creating unnecessary anxiety about the thing. And what that was doing is I was stressing myself out more. It still wasn't getting done.
Yep.
And then I didn't feel confident about it.
Right.
So I've now realized that my healthy relationship with procrastinating is I will do some of the prep work, but then I do my best work at crunch time.
Yeah.
But that is my relationship with it. And once I've accepted the fact that I am a crunch time person, I show up.
Hmm.
I let it go. So I get up a talk. I know I have another talk scheduled in a couple of weeks. I know what the topic is. I will get that done at least 24 hours before, and it will be
Yeah.
beautiful.
And
But
that
I had to come
also
to terms with that.
exactly, and that also is measured, I'm sure, on your level of competency as well. Like your prep time for something may be different from someone else's prep time, but you always set yourself up to win. So your procrastination level, or what I wouldn't call it, listen, I personally I struggle too, Dr. E, where when I was younger, those 5-star binders, oh, never mind, you younger. Those five
Yes,
star
I know what you mean.
Okay, sorry.
Because everyone
Because I
used to
had a
wonder Mead
five.
binders. Does
Ooh,
Mead still exist?
I
You
don't
remember
know.
Mead binders?
I
Used to
hope
zip
it.
it up?
Yeah,
Anyway.
zip it all around. Oh, child, I had one of those. And you can tell me I wasn't an executive in high school. My mead binder with the planner, daily planner, and everything written in pencil. I knew what was going on at 4:50. You should think I wasn't in high school. Like I had a real job. And I had all of
Mm-hmm.
these things scheduled out, my weekend activities. You can't catch, I could barely put things in my Google Calendar. You right? So it's just, but I have to organize my life.
But that's
Go.
what adults need to realize, especially moms, especially professional working adults. Like, get over the fact that you want to plan and have everything nicely aligned and creating, obsessive behaviors about
Mhm.
how they can get done. Are they getting done? This is
That's
what you
it.
need to ask yourself right now. Are they getting done?
Mhm.
And are you happy with the results after it's done? Now, if the answer to that is no, then you may need a 48 hours. You might need 24, you might need 48 hours. But if you're happy with it, it's getting done and you're doing a really good job with it, let it go. Stop trying to put it in your mind and adding more. I call it clogging up the mental board
Yes.
because that's what you're doing. Because I know I have to talk in 2 weeks. I already, you know what? My admin already know, okay, this week I can remind her about it and it can happen. But I what I get stressed about every week before about
Yeah.
this. This don't make
And
no
and
sense.
you set up systems to help yourself succeed. You know what I mean? So you're not sabotaging yourself in this process. You understand where you are, who you are, and that's why knowing yourself is so important. so that you can understand, hey, this is what this is how much time I need. This is what I need to do to be
Right.
successful. But I'm not that same person I was when I was 15, 25, 35. And I'm not going to sabotage myself by ignoring that
Right.
I've changed, or
And
by,
that is what a number one thing is. We ignore the negative emotions.
oh, listen, I love it. Dr. E, let's take a quick break. When we come back, more with Dr. Edrica Richardson, family and marriage therapist, the one and only Dr. E. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black Guardian Radio. We'll be back right after this. And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We are talking about sabotaging behavior and hyperindependence with my good friend and resident marriage and family therapist. I tell you, there is no one else. She really gives me free therapy. Like my husband and I, we love her. That's like therapy that's free. I swear to you. We're friends. I know I'm not supposed to use the friend card. But I mean, if you just have a quick question and you have some issues, you say, listen, Eddie, talk to this man, please. She show up just like my friend would.
Oh, that's funny. But you know what? You had a post. I want you to put one of those memes to put back up, the one about before the truth.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me find that one. Hold on.
But while you get that, before the truth, so you can tell the truth, something about holding yourself hostage.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to say this, that one of the consequences that you don't usually see self-sabotaging behaviors right away. And I want to make that very clear. Like we usually notice it when it's always a little too late, but I'm hoping by having this conversation, we start to realize it a little sooner. And one approach to this is whether or not your behaviors are aligned with your goals. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have goals, that's first problem. Because remember, you need to have goals. You need to have a vision. Vision produce goals. Goals produce like healthy behavior. Remember, it is said, and it's one time this makes true sense. Without a vision, people perish. Right?
Yes.
Without goals, what are you actually aligning yourself to? And so one of the things I see happening too is like perfectionists, right? Perfectionism is a serious thing that's happening a lot. And perfectionist is a person who, wants to always complete their task flawlessly. But what they don't realize is that perfectionism is a self-sabotaging behavior because that when you dismiss your incremental improvements, when making even a little progress would actually help you accomplish your goal, but you only can see the full picture of it, then you are self-sabotaging. That little thing, that not being able to recognize the fact that you got it done and you were successful at it.
Wow.
So I just wanted to say that because sometimes we don't even realize how that's happening from both ends of the spectrum. All right, I love this. This quote that you put up, this is everything. It said, before the truth can set you free, you need to recognize which lie is holding you hostage.
Powerful. That's a word.
How many lies do we tell ourselves on a daily basis? So I'm going to go back to the one let's go with one we do very commonly in our culture, self-medication. Alcohol. Like it's a pastime. Like, do we ever show up to a house party without alcohol? When's the last
No.
time y'all been to a dry party? Like, do we even know how to function? I'm talking. I went to a kids party the other day. Like the kid was, I think, turned 6 years old, and the adults reached and was like, "Where to look?" And I'm like, "It's a kids party. Y'all better drink some Capri Sun."
Okay.
But it's almost like we don't realize that we need to be medicated in order to function and be around people, and
Hmm.
that in itself is a problem because that means that that is self-sabotaging behavior because you're not being emotionally present. We started this conversation out by talking about the fact that we run from emotional intimacy. The idea that you could be close enough to somebody else, be connected, be vulnerable with them. We run from that. And so what we do instead is that we use a little self-medication and we package it in a nice format that, well, we're drinking
Social
people.
drinking.
We
Yeah.
socially drinking people. No, you know what you're doing? You practicing emotional retardism. That's what you're doing because you don't want to be there. You don't want to show up. And so what you do is that you put on this safety blanket. You put on this intoxicated spirit. And like my grandma used to say, you think the self medication can help you? The only thing that's going to do is give you a very much sober tone. So the things that you were trying to run away from are going to come up even more. It's nothing like being around somebody who's intoxicated because they tell all the truth and some more.
Oh yeah.
That's how some of y'all find out who your parents really are. But anyway,
Oh,
um, let's keep going because I don't want to be too messy today.
that's but you ain't but you go. Ooh, child. Let me just say this quote one more time. Before the truth can set you free, you need to recognize which lie is holding you hostage. That's a word. That's a word. I ain't gonna lie to you. That's a powerful one right there. That's deep.
That's
And
deep.
you're right though. That I call is reveal all kind of things. Who your daddy?
So let's talk about it a little bit in like relationships, right?
Mhm.
So let's talk about it at an individual relationship level. So what does self-sabotaging look like? One of the first thing it looks like is like you always blame others when things go wrong. That's the
Mm.
number one thing people do. Sometimes, bad things just happen without it being anybody's fault. But we have those people who have to blame somebody who refuse to take accountability or who just refuse to believe that it could just be. It has to be somebody's fault. And that hyper expectation that somebody needs to be accountable is really their own self esteem, self worth issues. And so they don't want to deal with those. So it has to be somebody else to make it make sense.
Mhm.
And so what you want to recognize is you want to explore how you may have contributed to some of these issues, to some of these problems. Maybe you failed to communicate a part of the message, so the person didn't do the whole thing you asked them to do. Maybe they were having some difficulties. Did you stop and ask them that? But instead, no. What you do is you blame somebody else. Another thing
Mhm.
we do is we choose to walk away when things don't go smoothly, right? Like
Mhm.
we run from conflict. We run from a disagreement. And I don't even use
Yep.
the word conflict, just a disagreement, because now when we hear conflict, everyone's like, no, we run away from a disagreement. If you're in any type of relationship, even the one with yourself, right? You're gonna even sometimes disagree with you.
Yes.
Like you want to do this, but you could disagree with you. So there's nothing wrong with moving on from situations that just don't meet your needs anymore. This might be the best option sometimes, but it's usually wise to take a quick step back and ask yourself first, did I really make an effort? Did I really make an effort? I want these things to go smooth, but did I make an effort to help them go smoothly? And they're valid reasons, right? Sometimes we're really persuasive, or sometimes there is something that just there's some doubt there going on. But I I I was looking at this. I was watching this thing the other day between these two people. Me in workplace hazard, right? People watch, and I was listening to this conversation because they were talking so loud next to me,
Mhm.
and the partner was asking about something, and the person forgot. I could tell by the look on their face. Like I know they didn't even have to answer their partner, and I could tell they'd forgotten the thing that they were just reminded to bring before they left home. Well, what instead the person did was instead of saying, my bad, they just walked off. Like if they didn't want to deal with the fact, and maybe it's disappointment. Maybe you come from a family in which when you disappointed somebody, it was so tragic and so emotionally um, like emotionally dampening for you
Mm-hmm.
that you weren't able to deal with that. So now when you disappoint your partner, instead of you letting the partner say, don't worry about it, we like I understand, you assume that they're gonna get on you, so you walk away from it. You
Wow.
automatically avoid it.
Huh. Is
Um,
that shame?
yeah. It's shame and guilt. Yeah.
Shame and
Shame
guilt.
is
Okay.
so sometimes you pick fights with your friends and your partners. That's another way to self-sabotage. We subtly do this. We subtly undermine ourselves. And so maybe you're always ready to argue, even over little things. Like, oh, you know that one family member who they just always messy or angry
Yeah.
just for no reason?
Yeah.
You know what I always look at them and say? That one person family, you should be like, I really feel sorry for you. And sorry, not in a critical way, but sorry for the fact that you aren't emotionally mature enough, you aren't emotionally in tuned enough to realize that you need some help.
Mm-hmm.
That everything has to be a big deal, everything has to be an argument, or you know that one family member who always has to raise their voice for everything,
Yeah.
like they cannot talk in a monotone voice.
Mm-hmm.
That can tell you their emotional struggles. When you see those people, you should say to them, you should really ask them, "Are you okay?" And genuinely mean it. Don't say it in a way like "What's wrong with you,"
You
but
really.
like, "Are you really okay?" Because the fact that you have to raise to that octave always to get somebody to listen is a problem. We also do it by putting ourselves down. Self-sabotaging is putting yourself down, like not realizing. I had a client the other day who just got this promotion, and she could only tell me why everybody else around her deserved this promotion. She can
Yes.
tell me one reason why she didn't deserve this promotion. And I sat there and I was like, we've been in therapy together for a few weeks now. Let me give you 5 reasons off the top of my head. And she was like, oh yeah, that is me. I said, so who else deserves this promotion but you?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
carry this team. You lead them. You stay late. You you pick up the slack when other people aren't doing and don't point it out to them. I said, girl, don't only deserve this promotion, you deserve the money coming with it too.
That's right.
And sometimes we don't get that. We don't get the fact that we are good enough, that we can do things right. And that sometimes when we don't notice, other people will notice for us. And so we got to stop criticizing ourselves about it. And a lot of this comes from patterns learned in childhood. It comes from past relationship dynamic issues. Maybe you had an abusive partner, fear of failure, a need for control.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, people who have this need for control are very much self sabotagers. Because what happens is that they suffocate their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
They suffocate them by the fact that they need everything to go a particular way. And as a self sabotager in recovery, I'm going to call it that.
I like
Yeah,
that as a self-sabotager in recovery. I like that.
in recovery, and this is going to lead us to this conversation about hyperindependence. I think a lot of it has to come from our historical past, right? We really have to look at our lives to figure out what trauma it is that we're running from or trying to avoid to really understand why our behaviors exist the way they do. And that's literally what hyperindependence is. And I know we're going to get to that one another side of break, but people really need to sit with themselves for a bit and ask themselves when you have to be in control all the time, when you have to be the one to always make all the plans, when you have to be the one to make sure it always goes right. Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a healthy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes life just happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? You get out of the house and your kids still spill their cereal.
Mm-hmm.
It just happens sometimes. Or you wake up 5 minutes late and it throws off, that 5 minutes could cost you traffic or no traffic. It just happens. But ask yourself that negative self talk that is about to come in after you're 5 minutes late, why? You ain't gonna do nothing about it now. Just get to work. Just
That's
get
it.
to work when
It's so true.
just let it
It's so
go.
true.
And
That's
so,
that's
go
deep.
ahead.
No, no, no. And if you're just tuning in, joined by Dr. E here, we're talking about self-sabotaging behavior, and we'll also be discussing hyper independence as well. I think, and I can't wait for that part as well. This is interesting for me. The self-sabotaging behavior, Dr. E, is an interesting conversation because, again, like you said, it's definitely a subconscious thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it. Are we finding that this is this negative talk or negative experiences? Is that what you're saying, that these things that have happened to us from children, from childhood, Like you mentioned early, the toxic sibling relationships, that parenting maybe, which is a lot of our, a lot of our issues in childhood. It's that, God help us. And as a parent, I always have to be mindful of what I'm doing to my children, right? Like,
Yes.
um, I need all kind of therapy just for what I hope I ain't doing to my children that I'm worried I might be, like it, so but I need to go to therapy, I think, just to make sure that I'm doing a good job with the girls. But is this all subconscious? This is things that are in us that we get from childhood? Is this limiting talk or belief that is causing us to be filled with guilt or blame, shame, feeling unloved? Is this all of this limiting beliefs from childhood, or is this things that have happened that could have happened later in life?
It's a combination of both, or it could be one or the other. But I think the first place always to look at is your childhood trauma. All of us on some level may have had a level of childhood trauma. Maybe we had a level of guilt, right? You might be that one child in the family who can't think about your future life without thinking about your whole family. So you have this guilt of family you carrying with you. Maybe you were the child who always blamed for everything going wrong. Maybe you were the one who, when you did something bad, you were ashamed for it. Maybe you were the one who never felt like you were good enough to be loved. Maybe you're the one who felt like, if I would just be perfect, that no one, that if I could figure out how to do that, then people would love me. The idea that imperfection was this huge deficit. Um, Maybe the one that always felt like things should always go right, right? And don't understand the fact that maybe you're emotionally, you have some parts of you that are broken.
Mhm.
So the specific causes really do vary by person. It can happen from parenting, it can happen from childhood, maybe your adolescent years. And our first relationships all have effect on us. They have a huge effect on us. So one of the main reasons why people self-sabotage their relationships is usually a fear of intimacy. People are afraid of intimacy. When they fear the emotional or physical closeness with other people, you tend to see an increase in self-sabotaging behaviors. So everyone wants and needs intimacy. But certain people, certain experiences, intimacy may be linked to this negativity, right? Negative rather than this positive experience. So you push and pull. And this push and pull behavior creates this breakup, this avoidance, and this idea of self sabotaging that will happen. So I think about it like this. When we look at it in an intimate relationship standpoint, when you meet somebody new and you're happily dating them for a while, the connection is great, the chemistry is there, and you know what? The sex is fun. So you start to spend more time with the person, you time more time together, and you consider yourself, maybe you even decide that you're going to be a couple, but then you stop. For some reason, you just stop. You stop replying to the messages. The texts take a little longer to come back. You start to cancel dates. You avoid even talking about things that you might have done in the beginning part of the relationship. Then your partner may say to you, like, they start to become frustrated, even disappointed. Not long after, maybe they even break up with you. Does it sound like something that you do? And if so, you've just recognized your self sabotaging characteristic. So we tend to realize that in the first 3 months of a relationship, I always tell people, you bring the best version of yourself. But when your partner brings up ideas of having introductory dinners like with parents or talking about long-term plans and you run for a mass exodus,
Yeah.
you are doing some self-sabotaging behavior. And a lot of those things, those little quirks, those annoying flaws that before you would have like looked over, they start to come back for you. That's when you realize that you are the self-sabotaging person. And
Wow.
that's because of this fear of intimacy. And so again, we really have to learn, how do we recognize this? Are you, again, are you being disrespectful to your partners? Do you interrupt them all the time? Do you act like you don't care about them? Another one is maybe being overly clingy, like needing too much time and attention. Maybe you withdraw. Your relationship can't progress when there's no cutoff time, right? Maybe you're just trusting,
Mhm.
not trusting your partner will lead you, or feeling that sense that they can do it. Jealousy is a huge one. You come across controlling for no reason, and that's not what you intend to do. But those are just some ways we tend to do this. But a lot of this is just about paying attention, being knowledgeable about it. Because at the end of the day, healthy relationships take a lot of work and often they can mean a good thing. But it starts out with first recognizing and realizing that it requires us to show up emotionally intimate, right? It shows
Mhm.
us vulnerability. We can't run away from it anymore. And it's not always our fault if something doesn't go right, especially if you're showing up as your whole self.
Yeah.
The problem is that most of us don't show up with our whole self. We show up with a version of ourselves. And then when somebody actually pushes that version and they realize that maybe this ain't exactly who I am, child, we start running for the hills, run, trackside.
All right, Dr. E joining us here. We're talking about self-sabotaging behaviors. And I like what you said there, Dr. E. One of those, something that, where this formula by this life coach, right? I don't know what the heck is a psychic life coach, but uh, a point was that they have this formula that says guilt. And these are all the things that you mentioned. Guilt, because I carry guilt, therefore I should be punished. Blame, because I carry blame, therefore I should carry all burdens. Shame,
Mm,
because I am ashamed, therefore I should hide or suppress.
right.
Unloved, because I am unloved, therefore I should be perfect, right?
Mm,
Broken, because I am broken, therefore I shall appear whole, right?
mm.
And that reminds me of that hyper independence thing you were talking about, which I can't wait to
You
get
ready? You
to.
ready for that?
I'm ready.
We wait for the other side of the break.
Imperfect, because I am imperfect, therefore I should imitate. Woo! That's some self-sabotaging behavior. And you hit on it with in terms of intimacy. So we're going to talk about that. On the other side of the break, though, we're going to hit on with my good friend, Dr. E, Dr. Edrica Richardson. We're talking about self-sabotaging behavior. And of course, well, soon on the other side of the break, hyper-independence. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM. We'll be back right after this.
It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. It's the Hit Back with Nahaja Black.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM. I want to just say that special thanks, of course, to Dr. E. We are talking about self-sabotaging behavior. And now we're also going to add into that hyper-independence, because as we are self-sabotaging, one of the traits, I think, and Dr. E can let me know if this is true or not, is that we do have this thing in our culture where we got to be super independent, especially for us ladies. All of a sudden, it needs to be this level of extra independence. I want to bring on, of course, my special guest, Dr. Edrica Richardson. Dr. E, it's good to have you on the show as per usual. All right, Doc. So we talked about self-sabotaging behavior, right? And I wanted
Mhm.
to, just to make sure that I get it, and as we transition here, that self-sabotaging behaviors, um, and this is for business, right? This is on a business trip, right?
Right.
Um, and I wanted to do that because we talked about it earlier, with
The family.
procrastinating and
Right.
and all of that. And of course, for folks who know that I love business as well, just wanted this as a point for self-sabotaging behaviors when it comes to business. putting off clients and sales generating work, trying to focus on too many things, not networking with other business owners or entrepreneurs, constantly worrying about what can go wrong, not pricing your products high enough, fooling yourself that you will not burn out, setting unrealistic goals. That is seriously just for persons who just, when we talk about that self sabotaging when it comes to business, this would normally be done on a
Right.
Wednesday.
Yeah, but
But I wanted to slide this in there because self-sabotaging behaviors can go across all spectrums. I just wanted to throw that in there as a note, Dr. E. Sorry.
I love it. But
In the
no, I love it
relationship show.
because we have to realize that, but that's a relationship. How you are with your
Yeah.
business, how you are with your clients, how you are with your career goals. You could be sabotaging in that way. It may not just be in your. So remember, relationships can be any type of relationship. Relationship with yourself, relationship with your family, relationship with your intimate partner, relationship with your business, relationship with your career. So that totally fits because some of us complain about the fact that our businesses aren't thriving, yet you have calls and you lack customer service. So that might be the reason. You don't call the client back, or you didn't go meet the client on time, or you told the client you were going to send them a proposal for something. It's been a week. Look, I am in the process of doing some stuff, and I had several people come to give me estimates. I'm still waiting for quotes. So they can't get my business no more because to
You're right on
me,
that.
they're not serious, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I am running behind nobody to give them my good earned money. So you have to act as if you want them, and that's all about it. I went to this lady earlier this week to get a facial, and let me just tell you, her quality of service alone will get me to keep coming back. Okay,
Mm.
her attention to detail, her professionalism, her want to make sure that it was a great experience, right? And then when I left, the unbeknownst to her, I did a review. I didn't even tell her I was going to do it, right? And that's what I'm getting into now. Like, people have to realize how important it is to give somebody else a review. Giving them a
Yes.
review really adds a lot because we go to the internet first to say whether or not we're going to go to this place. And she was just so grateful. And she didn't ask me to do it. I saw the little sign there and I did it. And I said, you know what? This, I'm going to give the tip and this because this word of mouth that she's going to get from this is going to propel her business. But I want her to realize how good her business is
Yeah.
and that I could see the hard work that she's doing in this. And so those are all important things. So I think we have to realize that we play a role in our lives and we can also sabotage our lives. So it's up to us to take accountability for what type of life do we want. Do we want a life in which we're being accountable? And you don't sabotage across the board most of the time. Most times people pick an area in which they sabotage in. And when we get to this hyper independence, this is what it is. Hyper independence, typically I've seen it the most times, is that people will sabotage when it comes to intimate relationships when it comes to hyper independence.
Yes.
And let me define that. So hyper independence is a perfect example of how too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's the idea that the strength of independence is nullified by the complete inability to depend on others. So
Whoa.
the strength of independence is nullified by the complete inability to depend on others.
That's
So
deep.
hyper independence can often be, and most times, it's a response to past trauma experiences.
Wow.
So I'm gonna let this thing sit in for 5 seconds before I go into that some more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the idea, and let me break that down to the most layman term. It's the idea that you're so independent, you're so able to take care of yourself that you don't allow anybody else to help you with anything. And we have all been socialized to think that independence is great and there's nothing wrong with being independent. But when you're hyper independent, you're so great that you don't need others. Well, that's fine, but you can't live in this human world because we all as humans need others at some point in life. Even if you're going to need another person's service, that is needing somebody else. And so I tend to see this most being experienced within relationship systems.
Wow.
And so, I mean, when you think about it, have you been like, do you have qualities that allow you to ask for help? Are you so hardworking? You're so generous. You're so forgiving. You're so ambitious. And yes, All of those things are true, but you can have so many strengths that they turn into weaknesses. And so this is something you have to be careful of. We tend to overlook a lot of times being too independent. And so how do you know if you're doing this? I'm going to give you some telltale signs that you can look out for
Yeah, we need
to
it.
make sure that this is not you. And again, as somebody in working, I'm going to call it recovery process of acknowledging and understanding my own hyper independence and how I could tend to sometimes self sabotage my own relationships. I have become more aware of this. So let me give you some of the things that we know there, because what it does is it creates a lot of trust issues. And I'm talking about trust issues that were never there in the first place. It creates a system in which you tend to do this because hyperindependence, I think, a lot of times more often comes from some traumatic experience. Maybe somebody didn't do something they said they were going to do for you. And the moment they didn't do it or they didn't show up, let's say your partner said they come in to pick you up at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And they show up at 6:05. You freaking out. And you remember that time when your daddy said he could show up and he didn't show up?
That's some real trauma. That's some real trauma.
And so it has taught us to trust ourselves and not to trust anybody else. It's taught us to go through life by ourselves. And so we have to be very careful with this. So 8 signs. So let me give you 8 of them. So the first thing is you're a very, very private person. Now don't get me wrong. So has anyone ever told you before that you're secretive or mysterious all the time? Do people constantly tell you that you're such a closed book that you should try opening up every once in a while? Well, we all certainly have the right to our privacy, right? And no doubt, privacy is necessary. It should be something to be respected. There's a difference between being a private person and wanting to keep ourselves completely closed off from other people. So let me give you an example of this. So I do believe relationships should be private. I do not believe relationships should be a secret. If you're dating somebody and you can only do stuff in the night, or you could only go to places that they can either rent out the whole space, or the places in which they go on very at times where nobody's there. That's a little secret. You're a little sneaky linky. Are you sneaky?
You sneaky.
You sneaky. So privacy means that I'm going to protect my relationship from everyone being in our business, but people would know that we're together. That's the difference.
Right.
If nobody could say y'all together, y'all is a secret. Anyway, let me go on.
And a lot of people, I don't understand how folks don't know, and they're the secret. Like sweet boy and girl, 3 years in, you still don't know the parents. And the parents nice and alive.
This podcast the other day, and the guy was saying to this girl, like she wrote this book or something. I guess she's some like, I want to say, I don't know if she was a side piece or what, but he told her she was a side chick, because if nobody knows about you, even though you and the person in a relationship, if they don't talk about you, if they don't show you off, and even though they telling you you're the main person, but nobody have any records of these stories, you are not the main person.
You are not the one.
You are not it.
You're not the one.
Right.
Don't even take the blue or green pill. Boo, you ain't it.
Oh, it's a serious thing. All right, number 2. Hyper-independence could also come in the form of being a workaholic or an overachiever. So if you're the kind of person who always likes to be busy and tends to throw themselves in their work, their studies, being hyper-independent could possibly be the reason why. So you focus more on your career and your academics because you're scared to let yourself have a little outside life. Things do outside open. Okay? You just have to connect safely. Still wear your mask.
Yeah, right.
But you keep yourself preoccupied because you want to have an excuse, right? You always have that excuse ready. You can always cancel plans, not to spend time with your loved ones or be by yourself for long periods of time. So you do these things to avoid others. And more importantly, you avoid yourself. That is another version of hyper-independence. Just because you're an overachiever does not mean that that's a good thing. People always confuse that. Like, you're so busy, you can't even show up. And I'm talking about, you don't really realize it until you crash. And when you crash, then you're like, oh my gosh, I tired. Hyperindependence. Number three, you don't know how to delegate tasks. Every time you get in a position where you're in a position of power, a position of leadership, some leadership role, your biggest weakness is always your difficulty with delegating. And a lot of us struggle with this. Like we just want to hold it all. Like, look, my business is my baby, so I get this, right? But I had to realize at some point, if I didn't take on other people to help me, like getting people help with social media or getting people to help me with my administrative task or my account, you know what I mean, the different levels of the business, then how am I, one, being a good leader? How am I creating leaders? But how am I also not being too overly independent? Because businesses don't thrive when you want to do everything yourself. They actually thrive when you are able to delegate tasks. And most important, it eases you so you can think of more business. Come
Yeah.
on, people, we got to think about it like that.
Yep.
So you have to learn to trust people that they'll do things. They're not going to do it exactly the way you would do it. But if they can do some version of it, and maybe that means you get two people to do it, then that's fine. But you have to figure out how to delegate tasks to other people. Everything can't just be you. Look, I had to learn this in my business. I do not want to be a one-woman show. No, ma'am. I so love my admin, and she knows that. And I love the social media team. Like I love these people because they give me more time
That's
so that
it.
I can create, I can develop more, and that I can be this great therapist that I am.
Hmm.
Because I realized that delegating is the key.
Yeah. This is
And let me say this:
uh-huh.
with delegating, you don't always want to be hyper sensitive to when people, like when they give you something and it's not your level. Ask yourself, you're not expecting you from them. You're expecting a version of you from them. Okay? They aren't you. So they're going to try their best. So if you train them, that's different. But if you did, you know what I mean? Like we also got to ease up on that.
Yeah, and I'm totally with you. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We're talking and chatting with Dr. E on self-sabotaging behavior and hyper independence. Doc, okay, so there's this quote here that I really like. Ultra independence is a coping mechanism we develop when we've learned it's not safe to trust love, or when we are terrified to lose ourselves in another. We aren't meant to go it alone. We are wounded in relationship and we heal in relationship. I thought that was a powerful
It is.
quote there. But is there a difference? I've noticed online there's a difference, but people are saying ultra independence and hyper independence. Are they one and the same, just to make sure?
They're one and the same. People just use the words interchangeably. They're one
Okay.
and the same.
And so,
And
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, because my question is, because you mentioned even with work and this level of independence, we know when you were saying it's a part of trauma, it's a product of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the I think the number one thing is trust, right? That the trauma that has broken trust. And you
Right.
said two signs so far. You're very private,
Mm-hmm.
mhm, and a workaholic or overachiever.
Yes. And then don't forget to work all, you don't delegate.
Oh,
That's
I
the third
know,
one.
right? Yeah, and you don't delegate. God, now here's the
I'm
thing.
sure
Now,
all of us do. All of us have a boss we can remember. And the reason we left the job was because we never felt like we could have grown,
hmm
because nothing we could do was right, or the fact that they only see you in one position. I remember having this conversation with a client a few months ago, and I was like, you gotta have to leave that job because this person doesn't see you beyond this role. And when people don't see you beyond that role, then that's not a place for your growth and development. And a lot of it was because I think the boss was so afraid that the person was better than them, meaning not better than them in the fact that, look, I expect and I hope some of the therapists I'm training now, I want them to come and take over. That's kind of the cycle of life, right? I get to relax a little bit more. They get to come in and show up. But people get threatened by that. And in our society, especially, we get threatened. Like, I mean, I think that's why we adopted that whole what is it, pensionable and permanent and pensionable thing? Because
Permanent
honestly,
intentional.
we know some of those people that had those companies too long, they aren't doing any work, and quite honestly, they're not qualified in this era to
That's
perform
right.
the task of their job.
That's right.
Now, maybe 10 years ago, they were brilliant, they were excellent in doing it. But right now, they're not. And that was the problem. And so we need to let them go. They need to be honest with themselves and let themselves go, but they won't do it. And again, that is just the selfish nature of us as humans. But you have to be at places where growth is possible.
Mm.
All right. So back to my, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Yeah, go back to
And
my
I know
list.
we have about a minute before our next break. So I just wanted to just this one question really quickly. When you look at it, Dr. E, and based on the signs, and we are discussing hyper independence. Dr. Edrica Richardson joining us, family and marriage therapist. And maybe I should wait for after the break to ask you this question, because my curiosity is it found more in women than in men? Is it something where we
Mm-hmm.
as women tend to be more hyper independent, or is it also something that we find equally in men as well? And let's discuss that after you've shown all the signs. But that's something that I'm curious about as well. You're joining us. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We are having a very interesting discussion on self-sabotage and hyper-independence, the behaviors that affect us in our relationships. Are we sabotaging ourselves? And are we doing the most by being hyper-independent? And those are issues of trauma, getting to the root of the trauma. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. We'll be back right after this.
It's a hit back with Nahaja Black. It's a hit back with Nahaja Black. It's a hit back with Nahaja Black. It's a hit back with Nahaja Black.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. I'm joined by none other than the illustrious, the brilliant Dr. Edrica Richardson. Dr. E, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me back as always.
Listen, Dr. E, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. We are talking about a very interesting, and I'm happy we're having this discussion. We never talk about hyper independence. Most humans we've never used it in our vernacular. Most humans have not used it in our vernacular, but we know what it is, And the self-sabotaging behavior is so deep. If you missed any part of the show, don't forget, you can follow, subscribe the channel on YouTube. You can, of course, you can go to the Guardian website where the shows are logged on the website as well. And you can go to our Facebook page. You can go to facebook.com/Nahaja Black Show. You can go to YouTube, type in the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, and you will find the show there. Subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you'll know whenever the show is on and you'll never miss a beat. The self-sabotaging, because we start off talking about self-sabotaging behavior, Dr. E, and how it is definitely one of those things where whenever it's like when good is present, you're like, that's too good for me. I got to ruin it somehow, right? Where I do the most to make something that was supposed to be good bad. I don't deserve this thing. And I believe those responses, like we said, are the fruits of trauma as well, or limiting beliefs as well. Some issues that you say that impacted us to believe. Okay, Doc, maybe I add an extra. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I was reading this article by a colleague, and it said that the common phrase when you think of like hyper independence, self-sabotaging stuff is, I can do it by myself.
Yeah,
I can do it by myself. And in this article, the colleague was talking about the fact that they heard this phrase coming from a 2-year-old little girl on a daily basis. And she was just determined to be independent and to accept, she wasn't willing to accept help from anybody else. And she would go through her daily activities, accepting no help, even when it was tough. And what does that do to you when you chronically do that all the time over the course of your life? It's going to start to ruin everything. Now, what I'm saying is that at 2, of course, there is a natural strive for self, right? So self abilities that I can do things by myself. But when it's the fact that mommy or daddy can't even help you with something, you're already on the road for this hyper independence. And it is very much like it could be called hyper or ultra independence. It's very much a real thing. And many of us have done this out of a reaction to some form of trauma or chronic illness sometimes. And so it's important for us to feel how we're contributing to this, how this is happening in our lives. And so, for example, when I say trauma from other relationships, like I said, it's the father that didn't show up for you and you sat there and you waited. So when your partner doesn't do it, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
Or it's the fact that people have disappointed you at some level, some expectation that they said that they would, and is creating, again, more trust issues. I think the number one thing I've seen from hyper independent is the inability to fully trust another person. And I get it. I get it. We've all been disappointed on some level by somebody at some point. But are you using that same measuring stick for now every new person that comes into your life? Are they getting a fair opportunity? Because like I said, the partner that shows up 5 minutes late, they were wrong because maybe they failed to call. But do you write them off completely or don't want to go anymore because of that? That's two different things. And so as somebody who's in recovery, working through this, some of
Get
the
your
things
healing on, Doc.
I'm healing. Is that you have to ask yourself, what is this costing you? What is this costing you? Because at the end of the day, I realized I was ruining relationships, right? And then don't get me wrong, because I one of my exes called me about this. I'm talking about y'all who just inconsistent. That's totally different.
No, that's totally different.
And save that call for somebody who cares. But I'm talking about the fact that, you have to allow people an opportunity to show up for you, right? So when I address the fact that you were 5 minutes late and what that triggers for me, and the next time you don't do that, and then the next time after that it happens again, but you called me, I can't go back and say, well, look, this happened like the first time. No, you did exactly what I asked you to do. You called me and say, babe, something happened. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I'm just running a few minutes late. So then what happens is at that point, my trust issues, my abandonment issues subside because now I know what's happening. I'm not out of control. And that's what we got to do. We got to stop allowing ourselves to get out of control. We start to flare up when we realize this isn't happening. Okay, so back to our list. One of the number one things I think is a sign of hyper independence is we have a hard time asking for help. Like, I mean, like the words feel like it's like death coming out of our mouth. Like, I need, it's like, so no matter how much right now you could be struggling with something, you never ask anyone for help to get you out of regular or sticky situations. That it's not because you're too prideful or too arrogant. It's because you don't want to ever have to need another person. You know that feeling like you just don't want to need somebody else?
Yeah, and that's trauma. That comes from trauma. For sure, that comes from trauma. Yeah.
So Eric Erickson, I think I talked about him on your show before. His first stage is trust versus mistrust, right? We develop trust versus mistrust. Trust comes from the ability to have consistent care from our primary caregivers. Most of us, that is our mothers. Now it can be your fathers too. But whatever it is, we develop those first attachments, those ability to trust from our parental care. So you develop mistrust when you don't have that. So think about the fact that when you don't want to ask somebody for help, is because you probably on some level develop some level of mistrust along the way from some parental or guardian figure, and you've not gotten over that yet. And so you don't know how to ask anybody for help.
Yeah.
You don't know how to think that somebody failure to do something was for a good reason, or maybe it was good intent. Like we can intend, like I have good intentions to help you with this, but you know what? Something else came up and I forgot to respond to your message. And so a fear of being seen as a burden or a nuisance is another sign of hyperindependence that all comes with, we don't want to ask for help.
Wow. That's a deep one. But then, but okay, see, now I had to stutter because I find that that's my challenge too, right? So all of us.
I tell you, we're working on this. I got to develop a 10-step program for recovering people from this. Yeah. But the first thing is acknowledging that we have it. Like I I'm in the process of doing some stuff for myself. You are aware of this because we
Uh-huh.
have personal conversations, but I'm out of my comfort zone with some of the stuff and I have to ask for help. And one of the conversations I had to have with myself the other day, and my hyper independence was, it will all be what it's supposed to be. I had to let it go. I was like I don't subscribe to stress, but I felt myself having
Your
stress.
stress, your
I
stress
was
levels
like,
rising.
hold on, what's going on? I don't even know this feeling. And I was having anxious behavior. Even at the point, I felt at some point, I started to see the signs of a panic attack coming on.
Oh
And I was
wow.
like, well,
Hold
hold
on.
on, hold on, hold on, hold on. This ain't even you. This
Yeah.
is not the world in which you live in. What is creating this? So I slowed myself down. I sat down with it for a minute and I said, that's your hyper independence. Like, people are helping you do this. They're not doing it on your timetable, but it's happening. So what are you worried about? And I said, you know what? I had a conversation and I said, I let it go. I let it go and let God. And believe it or not, within 24 hours of me doing that, bam, 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 stuff started to happen. And I was just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Let it
what
go.
does it need hyper independence?
I but is this a part of our culture though? I wonder what part of this is a part of our culture where we don't ever want to be a burden.
Yeah.
Somehow a burden is not good. Everybody has to be independent. So if you need help, let's say you're having like a tough month, and this one
Mm-hmm.
time you need someone to help you. Now you've always been open to being helpful, but
Right.
now when you need help, you are questioning: Is am I supposed to be able to ask for help? I mean, that is, I think, a part of it where, and I wonder if it's the nature of the person. Is it individual? Because some people ain't got no problem asking for help.
You know, I could say for me, mine comes from the fact that I watched other people around me in my life growing up. And this is something to be honest with. Um, I tell my mommy this all the time. And I tell her, child, this is why I probably am a therapist. We were the responsible version of our family, right? Me and my siblings. I say that all the time. So I don't think that's a big secret. Like, because we were the responsible version of our families, we never had an opportunity to. I tell her some days I wish I could be the irresponsible kid. I don't even know how to do that. I don't think I've ever actually been, like, I've seen my friends, I've nursed them back. I've never been blackout drunk. And that's not something to achieve for, but I'm just saying, like, I have never been to a place where I felt like out of control.
Right, reckless or out of control. Yeah,
And
you
that's
have
that
to see
hyper
it.
independence.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying there's something people should strive for, but I had to acknowledge that is a result of the fact that growing up, we had some family members who were so out of control, who were always a nuisance, who were always asking for stuff, that I didn't want that to be me. I saw what that did, and so I tried to become the complete opposite. Remember, in our lives, we either learn to be like things or be the opposite of it. And now we could sometimes be the opposite to our detriment, because we then don't know how to ask for help. We don't know how to receive help either.
That's right. That's
And
right.
so that was what I had to say to myself, is like, why can't you? Like, what's wrong with this? This doesn't make me vulnerable. This doesn't make me anything. It just means that I'm a human, right? I had to have that conversation. And so I had to realize, which is the next one on this list, was I had to decide that I don't have to decide everything by myself. I don't have to do everything by myself. You make all of the most important decisions in your life by yourself every day. And some of us rarely ask at all other people for their input or their opinion. You don't really consider what they think or would be best. And I especially see this in couple dynamics, right? When you're so used to being so independent that you might think that it's a good thing, and it actually shows just how much of hyper independence you have, because you alienate other people from having an input into something. And so look at the couple dynamic. Usually when it comes to certain decision-making tasks, somebody takes the lead on them. Sometimes it's the male, sometimes it's the female, or whatever your relationship dynamic is, right? Maybe let's use the example of paying the bills in the house, right? Somebody is usually a little better at finances than the other person, or you just say, you know what, this is something I don't really enjoy doing, so you do this task. And as a result of it, that doesn't mean you don't ask me my opinion about, okay, our mortgage is due this month. it's $2,000. And then we get this unexpected health bill. That's it. That's also $1,500. But right now in the bank account, we have maybe $3,000. So you decide without asking me what I think we should do about it because you're in charge of finances. That's you deciding something by yourself. I'm still going to let you, because this is our agreement, make the final decision, but I want my input to be heard as your partner.
Yes.
And so when you're in a couple dynamic, you really have to pay attention to that, because the more you alienate me, the less I feel attached, the less I want to be intimate with you. You keep pushing me away, I start to go away.
That's deep. Yeah.
And so something we have to understand, and we have to be conscious of. So next one, you struggle in long-term relationships. Most hyper-independent people, we be on a time off. That's why we get better now. We get better. We slowing it down. So whether it's a love or it's a friendship, you always had a hard time maintaining long-term relationships. And if you're being honest with yourself, you know it's because you tend to keep people at bay, is what I call it, emotionally distant. You could only get this close. You too close. Back up.
Yeah.
You could only get this close. So you feel uncomfortable opening up to them or getting too intimate with them. You always worry that you spend too much time together. Like, first of all, when did there become a cap on time you could spend with somebody? Like,
when you start to need them, because the independent person, see, when I spend so much time with you, then I start to need you. When I start to miss you, okay, hold on. I need your presence. I'm too independent for that. I don't need anyone. I don't need anything.
Because
that's the
you've
cap.
been told, and that is something we got to work on. We've been told that we're not supposed to need other people. We're not supposed to want other people. We should never chase after them. Anything that leaves should leave. Yeah. But I think so. Let's reflect on this. So for a moment, you really want to be around this person. You care about them. You want to spend time with them. But then there's a time cut off because somehow it's too much.
Yeah.
But this is what you want. But it's too much because you told yourself it's too much.
That's a self-sabotaging behavior.
Self-sabotaging 101. Look, we've said this on the show. We've been in a pandemic for 2 years now. 2 years. We approaching the end of the second year, about to approach the third one. Okay? If you want to spend time with somebody, spend fucking time with them. See, you cost me to say Bahamian words. Spend time with them. Why not? Okay? Time is the one thing in this life you don't get more of. So do it. It's not too much of it. Now, every now and then you might want to miss them, but I've seen this happen where people would literally say, oh, we've been spending too much time together, we should stop spending time. But the only reason is because we've been spending too much time together. Not because it's annoying you, because you don't want to do it. It's that we just been doing it too much. Who taught you that logic?
And is it, is the vulnerability there? Is it that fear of also being vulnerable? All of this time together is, making me uneasy, because maybe this is more. And this more, I know it requires vulnerability. I know it requires weakness. I know it requires me to risk something. Again, it goes back to what you can control, this hyper independence. And then thus this self-sabotaging effect, where your happiness, maybe it's the whole trend of I don't deserve to be happy, or
that narrative. That's a huge one. Like, or this is too good to be true.
Yes, that's a real one. That's a real. I have a wonderful friend who's dealing with that right now, where she's had so many bad relationships, not so many, but she's had not so many. I would say so many. She's had quite a small amount of bad relationships that were long. Wow. That someone who is good, who's actually breaking the mold, that can't be real. Yeah, they're probably married on another island, or that's not their real name.
That's a trust. That's a trust thing, because you've had so many people disappoint you in your life, or so many people who did not meet the promises or didn't meet your needs or your wants, that you just can't believe that good things can happen to you. And as somebody who's now accepting all the good things. Because what I had to realize lately, and I'm so glad, I just see I'm a human too, because some people forget that. They just be like, oh, she's just a therapist. Nothing has happened to her. Shut up, please. That's why I'm a therapist. Um, I realized lately as I was reflecting on my life, some things I prayed about years ago, some things I asked for and I put in the energy of the world, they're all happening to me now.
Wow.
And then when I sat back and reflected and I said, well, why is this happening to me? Girl, you did this. You created this.
Yes.
So why not? Why not enjoy the things in which you asked for? One thing I've learned about my spiritual identity, my energy of the world, is that you don't always get things right away. But when they show up, now I'm accepting them. Because somehow I put that as what it was that I needed, and it's there. So tell your friend that no, they ain't married on another island. You deserve this. You've asked for this. Maybe in your silent thoughts to yourself, maybe in your conversations with others, you've been asking and
And
wanting
in
to
her
do.
prayers, I'm like,
Thank
you pray
you.
for it though. Take a time out, just enjoy it. How do you see that's and you know, one of the things, the challenges is now, okay, of course, her hyper independence is um no, you can't call me these hours, well, which is fine to a certain degree. I'm not going out with this person. I'm only going
Right.
out once a week or once a month. And I'm like, but they want to spend more time and you want to spend more time. I don't trust the time. I don't want to fall in love again. And all of these things. And it's trauma.
Well, what does she have to lose? That's the question.
Her
What do you have
heart.
to
She
lose?
thinks she's gonna die next time she breaks it if her heart's broken again. Trauma
Look,
though.
we said this back when we talked about self-sabotaging. Our first heartbreaks are one of the hardest things that create kind of a map for the relationships for the rest of our lives. But you know what? I think what I learned from my first heartbreak is that I took away the fact that I needed to know how to have feelings, if that makes sense, like how to be with somebody and care to a point where you didn't even know how much you were doing it.
Yeah.
So now that I'm not going to regulate it necessarily going forward, but maybe I won't do certain things as fast as I would have done before, but I also know how to take care of me. I think it kind of taught me balance.
Yeah.
So if this person does break your heart going forward, then enjoy the moments of the love. Why not just accept that?
That's what I'm saying.
Look,
Listen, enjoy the ride of the euphoria, the feeling of being loved, and
yeah,
what it is. And God help you. Now I'd have to send it to you if a heart gets broken again, because I know it'll be in 1,000 pieces. But we'll take a quick break. When we come back, more with Dr. E. Our final segment with Dr. E. Hyper independence and self-sabotaging behavior. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM.
It's a hit back with Nahaja Black. It's a hit back with Nahaja Black. It's a hit back with Nahaja Black. It's a hit back with Nahaja Black.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Joining us, Dr. Edrica Richardson, family and marriage therapist, my one and only Dr. E. Dr. E, remind folks, how can they reach you, please, before we start the segment, because we're talking about hyper-independence and self-sabotaging behavior. How do
sure.
folks reach you, Dr. E?
So they can give my office a call at 425-0718, 425-0718, or they can go to my website, www.rpc-ltd.com. It's rpc-ltd.com. That has all my social media handles. You probably want to follow because I put out weekly videos or posts
Yes.
that are engaging, make you think, but also give you a little nuggets of hope and information to help you on this whole mental health and wellness journey of life. So I look forward to seeing you all. Follow me or give us a call and we'll help you out.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
I know my audience just loves you, by the way. Okay.
Thank
so just,
you.
I
So
know
we
as
have one
we're,
more. Oh,
yeah,
you want me to
okay,
run
you go
over
ahead,
all of them?
Yeah. Once you're done with that, then I'll go through all.
Okay, so the last one
Mhm.
is you dislike needy people. Whenever you see somebody, even the slightest bit of neediness, you immediately turn and run the other way. You don't like it when friends keep asking you to spend more time with them, or when family members text you or call you a lot. You become easily feeling smothered or suffocated by another person's attempt to get closer to you. So you shoot them down. You shoot them down so quick. Why? Why do we do this? Because you think being needy is a sign of weakness. And no one should ever need anyone else but themselves, in your opinion. Hyper independence.
Well, I mean, okay, but hold on. Okay, hold on. Now, this ain't looking good for me right now. Okay, this ain't looking good for me. I, now it's like, I'm looking at this list. And that last one
Hold
really.
on, let me say something else before we go with the list.
Okay.
So when,
that one hurt me. That hurt a little bit. Keep going.
whether it's a toxic relationship or falling out with a friend or being abandoned by some parent at some point in your life, or whatever other traumatic experience that made you feel the way you are feeling right now, just know that it will be okay. That it's good that you've learned to cope with your own way and do things by yourself, but you don't need to keep letting it define you. So again, being independent is good. I want to get that message out there. But being hyper or ultra independent is not good. And there's nothing wrong with being strong and being self-sufficient. There's nothing wrong with meeting other people every once in a while. In fact, it's a human experience. It only makes you human. So we all need love in our lives. We all crave companionship, affection, feeling accepted, all that stuff. And we just have to learn that we don't have to do everything all on our own. That at first, this is not going to be easy. When you're a hyper independent person, like I said, I'm a work in progress on this.
That must be
You
a
just
work in
want to,
progress.
you just really want to understand this, because here's the other part of it. My famous colleague, one day I can meet her, Brene Brown, talks about this. The other side of this is learning to understand vulnerability and the courage that comes from vulnerability. Vulnerability is the only bridge we have to build connection with others. And we have to learn to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is true intimacy. The idea that I'm going to truly let you see me, and I'm going to be okay with it, and I'm going to trust that. And even if it doesn't work out, I'm still going to be okay. All right, I'll go over the list one more time.
Yeah, because let's stick with that last one. No, that last one got
Okay,
me.
let's go back to the last one.
That last
You
one.
dislike needy people.
That's a dislike is a strong word. I don't know what does dislike mean in therapy? It isn't go over that one again.
Okay. So whenever you see somebody acting needy in the slightest bit, right? They ask you for something, or they want to spend more time with you. You just do the breaks. Pause. So you take it as this idea that they want too much of you. I want all of us to really analyze some of the relationships in our lives and some of the people we call needy. Are they truly needy? Or we're so used to not needing others, we don't know when people are actually being intimate with us.
Okay, I feel better. Now. I feel like you cleared that up. I was wondering how bad I was. Sorry, I was in therapy. I totally forgot all my audience just now.
Because, okay, so we use the word needy a lot when someone asks us for help sometimes. But is it really needy or somebody asking for help? And how do we determine who's the needy friend and who's the person asking for help? Because a lot of times they look a lot alike. The difference is how we tolerate them. Now, I'm not talking about the person who asks you for stuff all the time. I'm talking about the person who asks you to show up and be emotionally present with them. But instead, you see that as them asking for too much of you. So you call them needy because they want you. They don't want the version of you.
Needy. I wouldn't say needy. I'd just be like, y'all don't see my schedule. It's just too much. It's just too much.
Self-sabotaging behavior.
It's a wee bit too much, I mean, I love it.
I'm listening to this, reading this myself, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, I'm ready to send it. Look, anyway. As somebody who recognizes this, and this is what happens when you start to recognize it, when you start to see it in other people, it's the biggest turn off. And it's because you've worked through some of it, and so you want the other person to catch up. But you have to remember too, like you just figured this out, so the other person needs some time to figure this out. But I think sometimes we start to dislike needy people because at some point in our lives we were that person. We needed something. Maybe you needed that parent to show up for you. And because they didn't show up for you so many times, you learned to show up. You learned to show up for yourself. And as a result of that, now anybody that needs you to show up, you think that's too much. Trauma response.
Yeah. Oh,
trauma response.
I feel like I need a timeout just to meditate on that last one, right? Like, because if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Dr. Edrica Richardson, and we're talking about self-sabotaging behavior and hyperindependence. And we're going through the signs of hyperindependence now. Self-sabotaging behavior, you should see me. I figured that was straightforward. Like, okay, I'm good. I'm feeling good. I mean, I have some self-sabotaging issues, but no. But that last one,
You want me to read it again? I'll read the full thing again.
Yeah, because I don't dislike people. I don't.
You dislike needy people.
I don't dislike needy people. I just don't know who's needy. But I never maybe named them needy. I was like, you just need too much of my time, man. It's just too much of me. But I love you. Maybe can we just do this where we have a great relationship where we could talk like every 6 months and carry on smartly, like nothing ever happened? Like, I like those relationships. I know it's not good. Those are healthy relationships.
Those relationships aren't bad. But are you having, when you look at the totality of your relationships in your life, are more of them like that than not? That's the question you have to ask yourself, because there are some friends I have, we'll only catch up maybe once a year, once every couple of months, just because we live in different time zones or we live in different parts of the world and we have a lot of stuff going on. But am I avoiding them? Right? Am I not calling, not texting them back in the meantime? Are we having some other form of connection when we can't show up face to face? You know, this pandemic, for a lot of people, they learned how much they needed other people. They learned how much they wanted to be connected to other people. And others learned how much they maybe needed to disconnect from other people. But one of the things for those people who realized they needed other people, the question is, how come you didn't notice until now? Was that because you had this whole idea that if you asked them for too much of themselves or they asked you for you, it was too much? And so when I say you dislike needy people, you don't like it when your friends keep asking you to spend more time with them, or when family members text or call. And I do this. Like sometimes, like it's like it's just this my threshold. And I notice when I get into my threshold, what I tend to do now is I'll do a retreat. Like I get a retreat to myself, and I'll be like, okay, so I need some me time.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to be more communicative about it, because what I don't want to do on the other end of it is that I don't want to sabotage my relationships with these people because I need me.
Yeah.
And you could say this gently to somebody else, even your partner. You should be able to say, babe, I need a date. I need a date of me. Like I can go to the spa, or I could just sit on the couch and binge watch some shows. This could just be me and myself today. You do you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay. That is okay. We got to be able to have these conversations in our relationships. We can't see this as smothering or suffocating, and the attempts for people to get closer to us, we can't just always shoot them down. Hyperindependence tells us that this is a sign of weakness, that anybody who is needy is a sign of weakness. But ask yourself this: when you need somebody, if they called you needy, how would that make you feel?
That's right. This is powerful. I'm moved spiritually by this conversation. I'm telling you now.
Look, everybody would have learned something today, and if they didn't, y'all too hyper independent.
and you know that's why. And I thank you for your connection with Dr. Jones. Hopefully, she'll say yes to joining me on the show, because of course I'm a fan of her book. I'm waiting for your multiple books, by the way, Dr. E, so that I can have them.
Speak it. I got a moment.
Because her book, The Strong Ones, also talks in a way with this hyper independence, always having be the strong one, and when how do you do this mentally take care of yourself. Dr. Edrica Richardson. Okay, Doc, let's go through the signs of hyperindependence.
Okay, I'll run through the list and then I'll give you an acronym for how we can kind of curve this. So I want to make sure we get that in.
And I also want us to go back over self-sabotage. So let's start with self-sabotage and then come into hyperindependence for those who are just tuning in.
Okay. So self-sabotage is when you are seeing problems or creating problems in your daily life that stagnate you or kind of put distance between you and your long-term goals. Like you are creating the problems. They don't exist before. You're creating the problems. And when I say you're creating problems, you're self-sabotaging by procrastinating. You're self-sabotaging by always eating the comfort foods. You're self-sabotaging by self-medicating, maybe on some form of a drug. You're self-sabotaging by mutilating yourself. What self-sabotage is that the idea that maybe you have too many perfectionistic qualities, or you don't know how to deal with emotions like shame or guilt or feeling unloved. And so you do things because you don't feel like you deserve your goals. Remember, you created them. So if you created them, you deserve them. All right.
That's
and then,
really good.
Yeah, we create them.
Yeah, no, I love that.
And so what self-sabotage sometimes is a result of is this need for, or this want to be hyper independent, right? And we've been taught our whole lives. We live in a very individualistic culture, community. We've been taught that you need to be able to fend for yourself. But I think we took the idea of fending for ourselves to another level, where we don't understand the difference between fending for ourselves and still being in human connected relationships. And it's to the point where we don't even share. I saw this meme the other day where it's like, it's a red flag when your friends and family members have the plug on stuff, but they don't want to share it with you because they see you as competition. Ooh. When I saw that, I was like, ooh, that's deep. That was deep. Because there's no way, if we were successfully creating family dynamics of generational wealth, that if my sibling knew about something, they shouldn't have invited me to participate in it.
Yeah.
Why am I seen as a competition? Why am I not seen as the person who can be helpful or even just an investor in this?
That's right. That's deep.
I am so tired of these family secrets where you find out what your people are doing after the fact that they do it, or somebody say to you, "Oh, I know that so and so was your family." Child, I didn't know either. Because obviously they didn't want to tell me. And so then it leads to what we call this hyper independence. And because we now feel like we can be the only people to do things for ourselves, which is the idea that we nullify independence by not knowing how to be in relationships with other people, the ability to depend on another person. There is such a thing as being too independent, which means that you cannot connect in relationships, which means that you don't know how to ask for help. And so the list we went over is that 8 signs that you're a very private person. Remember, private and secret, 2 different things.
Yep.
You're a workaholic or an overachiever, which means that you use work or your studies as an excuse for why. You already have an excuse before anybody even asks you something. Oh, I can't.
Yep.
You don't know how to delegate to others, which means that if you're in a group project, maybe if group project's coming up at the end of the semester, you have to do everything yourself. You have to be the one to put the paper together. You have to put the presentation together. Nobody else can do it as good as you. You have a hard time asking for help. You struggle. You may need some input from somebody else. You're in a sticky situation, but you're not going to ask anybody. You're used to doing everything by yourself, whether it's getting the groceries or running the errands, that even when people invite you to do stuff or you need to invite somebody else, you don't know how to do it. You decide everything by yourself. You've been in a relationship with somebody and you don't even ask their opinion. They're just asking their opinion about, what do you think about this? You think this is a good idea? Another one is that you struggle with long-term relationships. You struggle to maintain them because anything that's too emotionally close, you need to run. And the last one is you dislike needy people, because we've been socialized to think that needing other people is a sign of weakness.
Yes. Yes.
And that was one of the worst lessons we got in life. Because, okay, let me put it back to us, for the old school people. If we didn't need others, how are we going to get out of slavery?
Oh, okay. And we still need others to get out of this new slavery called economic slavery. Hello.
So it's either we learn and we realize that the whole existence, the whole human existence was because we figured out how to come and be in relationships with others, with ourselves, with nature, with it's just relationships created human survival, human success. So we don't need others. What you can do? You're gonna live on a key by yourself?
That's what's gonna happen.
So
This is deep.
So I just want to make sure that now we know that we can be self-sabotaging. Now we know we can be hyper-independent. Let's look at how we're going to fix this hyper-independence. I'm going to give you a little TTA. That's the acronym, remember, TTA.
All right, real quick, let's go.
So the most common problem for someone with hyper-independence is that their inability to ask for help. So a good way to overcome this is TTA. Task, trust, ask. Task, trust, ask. TTA. All right? Task, which is give someone tasks to do even if you don't necessarily need the help with it.
Okay.
So you start with something small and you build on that. Because not only is it relieving you, it's also allowing you to invite others into your life. You're inviting. That's an invitation. Yeah, I can go to the grocery store and get this, but I could say to you, hey, hon, on the way home, can you get this?
Yeah.
Trust, second one. As the person accomplishes the task, trust is built between you and that person, so you can give them more stuff to do. Allow them into your life. And the last thing is ask. Once trust is built, you will feel more inclined to ask the person for help when you truly need it. So when you keep repeating this over and over, this is conditioning, what we call it. Once you condition yourself over and over, it becomes easier and easier over time. Now, how do we keep this in check? You got to check your ego. You got to leave that ego somewhere. That ain't serving you at all. Your ego is not always right. Remember that. It's impossible to be 100% right 100% of the time.
Right.
Look, I met no God on earth yet. So that means that you have imperfections. And as a result of it, you need to be able to check your ego. If not, your ego will check you.
Or you get voted out of office.
Exactly. So that's just something to remember as we work on this. And we have to be conscious of, are we acting on our trauma-based behaviors? We all deserve to be in healthy, happy relationships, and we deserve to be the best versions of ourselves. So this show today was just reminding you, am I doing stuff that aren't creating relationships in which I say I want? Am I not accepting that I deserve these things?
Dr. Edrica Richardson, Doc, this was a fantastic show. Thank you so much. This was heavy and liberating at the same time. I think it was definitely an eye opener. It's deep. This was deep. This was definitely like way under the surface, and as per usual, but I really walked away thinking, Jesus, Lord, I thought I knew a lot more than I did. Dr. Edrica Richardson, thank you so much, Doc. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, and I will see you very, very soon.
Yes, you will. In studio soon. All right, you're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Buddy, I learned a lot on that show just now. Everyone take care. We'll see you next time with Dr. Edrica Richardson. But I'll see you guys tomorrow. We're out.